In this video, I want to take a look at something that affects everybody who considers or is considering bringing some sort of a legal claim or commencing legal proceedings for a wrong, and that is the statute of limitations, which set out the time limits within which you must bring legal proceedings, or you will find that your case is statute barred. So let's have a look. Firstly, there are various time limits set out in statute. For example, in the Statute of Limitations Act 1957, as amended by the Statute of Limitations Amendment Acts of 1991 and 2000. There's also time limits set out in the Civil Liability Act of 1961 and in the Liability for Defective Products Act of 1991 and in the Civil Liability and Courts Act of 2004. But the essential essence of what I'm saying in relation to statute of limitations is that you must bring your claim within the period specified, or you'll be statute barred, and the person against whom you're bringing the claim will have a good defence, that is, that you are out of time. So if an action is not commenced within the limitation period, it will become statute barred and the defendant will have a good defence to the claim. A limitation period is a stated period of time, the expiry of which extinguishes a party's legal remedies and also, in some cases, a party's legal rights. So when does time begin to start running? In general, when calculating the time period, it commences on the date that the cause of action occurred. There are exceptions to this, however. If a plaintiff is under a disability, for example, the plaintiff may be in a hospital, may be a minor, or may have some other disability which prevents them from bringing a claim, they may fall into the category of exceptions which are allowed. Where the defendant is deceased, there's a different time limit allowed. The time limits then, a tort is a civil wrong. Generally, the limitation period for bringing legal action founded on a breach or on a tort is 6 years. However, torts such as negligence, nuisance, or breach of duty and involving a personal injury or an action for slander have different limitation periods. So an action for personal injury must be brought within 2 years of the date on which the cause of action accrued, or the date on which the plaintiff first had knowledge of the injury, that the injury was significant, and the identity of the defendant. So it may well be the case that you have suffered an injury, but the symptoms of the injury may not manifest themselves for some time. For example, if your injury was psychological or psychiatric, it may well be the case, or indeed a physical injury, they may not manifest themselves for a while after a particular accident or an incident. So it's the date in which the plaintiff, that's you, had first had knowledge of the injury, and that the injury was significant and you knew the identity of the defendant. Requisite knowledge then. So when you had requisite knowledge of the injury, that's defined in Section 2 of the Statute of Limitations Amendment Act of 1991. In fatal injury cases, the action must be brought within 2 years of the date of death. In an assault claim, a civil claim for assault, you must bring a claim for trespass to the person or assault and battery within 6 years of the accrual of the cause of action. So that would be within 6 years of the assault. A defamation case then must be brought within 12 months of the libel or slander or defamation. There is a possibility, however, of having this extended to 2 years on application to the court. You will need reasonable grounds or exceptional circumstances to put forward as to why you are not able to bring your claim, however, within the 12 months set out in the Defamation Act of 2009. Contract cases then can be brought within 6 years of the breach of contract. So a debt situation, if somebody fails to pay you for work you've carried out or a service you've provided, for example, you could be a small builder or a painter or decorator, whatever, you have 6 years from the date that the money became due. In relation, however, to defective cars, you must bring the claim within 2 years of the date on which the cause of action accrued. Defective products, then, actions must be brought within 3 years of either A, the date of accrual of the cause of action, or B, the date on which you had knowledge of the defect, damage, and producer of the product. So whichever of those is the later, in 3 years from that point. In relation to recovery of land, if you have an action, a legal action for recovery of land, it must be brought within 12 years from the accrual of the right of action. And actions against the estate of a deceased person must be brought within 2 years of the death of the deceased person. When does time begin to run? It begins to run from the date of accrual of the cause of action. This time, however, can be extended in exceptional circumstances. For example, if there was fraud involved, in other words, the defendant fraudulently concealed from you that there was some cause of action arising, and due to their fraud, you were unable to discover that, there was a cause of action open to you. Or another exception would be in situations perhaps of mistake, or where the plaintiff is under a disability. Time stops running then when legal proceedings have been instituted. In other words, in the district court, it's when the claim notice or summons is sent to the defendant, and in the circuit court and high court, it's when legal proceedings have been issued out of the relevant office. That is, the relevant circuit court office or central office of the high court. As I said at the outset, the plaintiff reserves the right to bring legal proceedings, even if they're statute barred and out of time. However, the defendant will have a good defence if he pleads statute of limitations as a defence, because in these circumstances, if the proceedings were commenced out of time, then they will be probably, in almost certainly, statute barred. But the court cannot consider whether the case is statute barred or not unless the defendant has pleaded the statute of limitations in their defence. Hope you find this video useful. If you do, give it a thumbs up down below, and you might be interested in subscribing to my YouTube channel.